Mogul Motivation, educating and empowering entrepreneurs 1 week at a time. Presented by True Stories Media. And I am your host, Antoine Twiz Taylor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Mogul Motivation. Welcome back. I'm happy that you are here. It's a very, very windy morning here in Chicago, and that's one reason why they call it the Windy City. But the story of David in the Bible is one of the most compelling and beautiful stories that I've ever read. You know, the story from when he was a kid all the way up through the fact when he was king. You know, you have to understand that David, he was anointed king when he was a child, when he was just a shepherd boy. You know, he was the youngest son of his father's children, and he was anointed king at that moment. But it wasn't until he was a grown man, many years later, that he became king. You know, he had to endure many things before his appointment. So we have to understand, just because you received the anointment doesn't necessarily mean that your appointment is going to follow it directly. David had to elude murder. You know, Saul tried to kill him 3 times. David was on the run. David went through a lot of turmoil before he even stepped into the throne room to become king. His appointment came many, many years after his anointment. We have to understand that as entrepreneurs and dream chasers, because I love how a lot of biblical stories can translate to entrepreneurship, and this is one of them. Just because David received the dream, the vision, the idea early on, that doesn't mean that it was going to come to fruition overnight. And that's how we feel sometimes. Yes, we have this amazing idea. We have this great vision of building $1 million business, of making a huge impact in the world, but we expect it to happen overnight. And when that doesn't happen, we get frustrated, we get discouraged, we get angry because our appointment hasn't arrived yet. Your anointment is always going to come before the appointment, many years before the appointment. We have to keep that in mind. We have to remember that just because we have the vision, just because we have the idea, we have the goal, we still have to go through some type of testimony. We still have to go through some type of trial before it comes to fruition, before it becomes reality. And that's everybody. That's just not you. That's not bad luck. That's not your journey. That's everybody. Everybody's time frame is different, but nevertheless, the anointment will always come many, many years before your appointment, before you step into that throne room, before you sit on the throne, before you become king, before you become a millionaire, before you become the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. It's going to be time before it happens. And when we realize that, we have to have a moment of virtue. The moment of virtue that I'm referring to specifically is patience. Patience. Patience is one of my biggest struggles, and I constantly deal with it every single year in my journey. We have to have a moment of virtue when we realize that our anointment and our appointment will not be consecutive. Once we realize that and accept that truth, accept that hard truth, we will be in better shape. We will have a moment of virtue. We will practice patience. We will reset ourselves and tell ourselves, yes, we have the anointment. That means that the destiny has already been written. We just have to continue to do the work in the meantime. You have the anointment, so it means that you've already been promised it. You have that vision, so it's already been promised. It's already been written. It's going to happen. But we have to understand that is going to happen in God's time, in the higher power's time, when the time is perfectly right. It's our duty to keep working, to keep doing everything we need to do to prepare ourselves for that appointment. So when we step into that throne room, when we step into the boardroom, when we achieve all of our goals, we won't be overwhelmed by it. We have to be very careful with what we wish for. Because if we receive the anointment and the appointment occurs tomorrow, we're going to be overwhelmed and we won't be able to handle it. These millions of dollars, all of this responsibility, we're going to fail, we're going to falter, and then we're going to be more depressed and discouraged than we were in the beginning. So yes, you have the anointment right now. You have that vision. You have the goal. You have the idea. Now continue to perfect yourself. Continue to prepare yourself personally. Continue to do everything you need to do to build up your fortress, your business, so that when your appointment does come, when you finally get that yes, when you finally get things going in your favor, you will be able to handle it and you will be able to make the impact that you want to make in this world. That's my message this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Very short, very brief. If this podcast has benefited you in any way, shape, or form, I ask for two things as always. Please pass it on to somebody else who may benefit from it as well, and leave a 5-star review and let us know how you like the podcast and what would you like to hear on the podcast in future episodes. So let's continue to work. Let's continue to imagine reality. Your anointment and your appointment will not be consecutive. It's going to be a time gap between the two. And in between the two, we have to practice patience. We have to reset ourselves with that moment of virtue. Tell ourselves that it's okay. We already have that anointment. It's already been written in stone. We just have to prepare ourselves, prepare our minds for that appointment when it comes. Have a great day, everyone. I'll talk to you next week.